Welcome, everybody, to E2KG's Deep Dive podcast. This is episode number 10, and I am your host, Osiris Prime, for tonight. We are going to be diving deep into the news that was for the week of 9/10 through 9/16. I guess we added the weekend in this week. That's fine. There's news sometimes on the weekend, isn't there? So, along with diving
There
deep,
is this week, right? This
yeah,
weekend we had Blackout, right? The Call of Duty mode, and
oh yeah,
so
the beta, yes, along with Trials, which I didn't get to play, unfortunately, but Trials Rising, I believe, is the full title of that one. But yeah, we're going to dive deep into the news stories from this past week, break them down, into little bitty pieces, and maybe dive deep into our own psyches. You never know. But with me tonight, we have the one and only Mr. Super Nintendo Swiss, aka Swiss Guard. Swiss, how was your weekend?
It was busy. And I would also caution you not to dive very deep into my psyche because it's like a labyrinth of depression,
Sleepless
self-loathing. No, it was good. I actually, Friday night, I got some good gaming time in on Destiny 2. So with the Gascleys and DB's uncle.
Oh, nice.
And your uncle DB plays a lot of Destiny 2.
yes, he does. Yep, yeah. He and I played a lot of Borderlands together and Borderlands 2, and we also have played some Destiny 2. But he definitely sinks some time into Destiny 2. So, how was it? How was it playing with a associated family member?
No, it was a lot of fun. So I will say this. He was very patient with me as I was on this mission where you had to do a lot of platform jumping, and I missed the jump like 4 times in a row until I figured out with my warlock I had to go up vertically before I went forward. And he just waited. He said, "I'll stay back here and respawn you every time you die," and he did his due diligence. So he was a gentleman.
That's because a year ago he was the one dying on Titan with all kinds of platform jumping, so he can appreciate that. Yep, very much so.
And that voice you hear, of course, watching our back, just like his uncle's watching Swiss's, is Mr. DBQ Hams. DB, how are you doing?
Well, see, I'm thinking here, the best part of, not the best part, but the hilarious part is when Agasicles comes on and starts to show all up, really excited, and then you kick it over to Swiss, and Swiss is like, "Don't dive too deep into my psyche. It's full of depression. I'm sorry." So, we are all about the extremes here on the E2KG network. So we got some high highs and some definitely some low lows. But it is a good week. We got a lot of stuff going on. I got a big old backlog of September releases looking at me, and we got a lot of gaming news to talk about tonight.
Yes, a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. First up here, we have some Nintendo stuff, actually. We had the Nintendo Direct last Thursday, postponed from a couple weeks ago because of the Mother Nature was very angry with them, I guess, or Japan as a whole. So they just postponed the Nintendo Direct to last Thursday, and they had a lot of stuff, actually. They threw a lot of stuff at us, a lot of games, a lot of stuff about I shouldn't say a lot of stuff, but about stuff about the online service. So, Mr. DBQ Hams, what do you got for us first here? Actually, I think it was something a little bit before the Direct.
Sure. Yeah. Let's start in chronological order and go before the Direct. I guess we had a couple of pre-TGS announcements coming out of Sony and Square Enix, but we have the kind of out of left field one is the remaster of Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, or in other words, Final Fantasy Hold My Lantern and Play with GBA. So, so that is coming out with online play, without any type of GBA connection.
No tethers this time.
Yes, no tethers. Probably still the Lantern, but for both PlayStation 4 and Switch. And which was a kind of a fun announcement. And then last Thursday with the Nintendo Direct, suddenly there is the floodgates of Square Enix remasters and releases on the Switch as well. And so suddenly, not only are we getting Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, which is coming out in 19, we're going to be getting World of Final Fantasy Maxima. So this is World of Final Fantasy, which is the PlayStation 4 and Vita game. I actually have the Vita game. It's a kind of turn-based classic. You kind of make your way through a chibi version of a whole lot of Final Fantasy history, and there's a little bit of Pokemon monster collecting in there as well. But this is coming out on the Switch this fall. We also got a slew of re-releases that have been out on other platforms, right? We get Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy X and X-2, Final Fantasy 12, and we get that is the Zodiac Age, the one that came out on PlayStation 4 last year, the remaster of the international version of Final Fantasy 12. And I think that gets most of our Final Fantasy in there. Is there one more? Oh yes.
Forgot about Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon.
How could I forget about my second favorite Chocobo game, right behind Chocobo Kart Racer, is Chocobo Mystery Dungeon, which I haven't even thought of since like the PlayStation 1 days. But that is coming back out with a remaster as well. So this is a roguelike, back when roguelikes were, not all the rage and the indie development aspect. But this is a roguelike, a dungeon crawler roguelike out on the PlayStation 1, and we're getting a remaster of that as well. So did I miss any other Final Fantasy or Square Enix Switch announcements there, Swiss?
I don't think so. My biggest thing was, why are they skipping Final Fantasy VIII?
And a lot of the internet, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite Final Fantasy. I actually, back when I was like Square Enix Final Fantasy fanboy, playing all the titles, that was one that I actually didn't finish because I liked it the least. But it just seems weird that it was omitted.
I think I've heard that a lot actually on some podcast where 8 wasn't the most favorite of people. So I don't know.
I think the omission is, if it is more glaring because there were like 8 Final Fantasy game announcements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if there was only, we've got the Crystal Chronicles and Final Fantasy 12, right? If they only announced a couple of them rather than all of them, it wouldn't feel as much of an omission, or that, we could still see some coming. So the fact that it's not, I guess it doesn't. They must own they've got the assets because there is the Steam version of it out there, and so it's not like one of those where they might have lost the code for at some point in time. But maybe they're saving it.
Become simple as prioritize and coming down to time and the ability to port stuff. So it just is the one that got left behind. But anyway, it's really cool that those are coming out because, I really like 10, and it'll be and 9 is the throwback version. So both of those, like, my kids haven't really played any Final Fantasies, so it'd be nice to get them, on the Switch to experience those a little bit.
Yeah, I think 9 is pretty accessible in that kind of throwback version-esque. A lot of these have been out on Android and iOS as well, so they're definitely out there in a variety of ways for people to play. But having a D-pad or at least an analog stick to play with them is going to make a big difference. Final Fantasy 12 I actually owned last year. I picked it up on sale and played it for a while, and truthfully sold it because it was tethered to a TV, and now the ability to, right, this is the fact that these games are being released isn't a surprise. Square is very happy to resell us their old properties, but the fact that they're tied to the Switch means that they are accessible, and I can take them on a car trip. I can take them, a variety of places. where I couldn't with the PlayStation 4 versions of these. So I think that hopefully breathes a little new life into some of these older titles.
So with all these announcements and with Octopath, and that's from Square Enix, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Being pretty successful, I think it's been doing pretty good. Do you think they'll do like a Crystal Chronicles for the Switch? You know, something just for Nintendo, or maybe Nintendo and PC or something like that. You know, you think that's a possibility in the future?
That's a good question. I guess it depends on how these sell. I think we also have The World Ends With You, which is from Square Enix as
That's
well,
right.
coming out in October. Which is a really solid game. So that in some ways they're going to end up putting a whole lot of RPGs out on the platform, and I wonder, if they stagger them enough where fans are going to be able to pick them up and not feel kind of overwhelmed or burned out on them.
It's you actually, there was a story on this, so I found it. So this is from June 5th. Square Enix using Octopath Traveler to test the Switch market. So Game Informer asked them if Octopath Traveler does well. Oh man, the page just scrolled on me. This is something that appeals to fans. We want to focus on Switch. Please pick up the Switch if you want to play games like Octopath Traveler. Square Enix has decided that it wants to focus on original titles for the Switch. This comes from directly from Tomoya Asano, the division executive at Square Enix. So yes, they basically threw that game out there, and there may be some Switch originals coming down the pike, because I think Octopath Traveler surprised everybody at how much it sold that first month. But to answer your question, yes.
Oh, good. That's good to know. I mean, at least they'll, well, I guess if anything, maybe we'll just get original content. Maybe not so much Final Fantasy stuff, but new RPGs that'll come down the line. So other than Final Fantasy, they obviously they had like a slew of games that we'd probably take like 3 podcasts to go through.
Yeah, right. There's plenty of other remakes out there between Katamari Damacy,
Yes.
and we get Super Mario U, New Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe, which was rumored. We get
That
some
has a
GBA
Luigi
ones.
version in
Pardon?
there too, right? It had the
Pardon?
Luigi U in the Super
Yep,
Mario.
comes with Luigi U. Yes, it does. Packaged together, and then you get 3DS with not only Bowser's Inside Story and Yoshi's Mansion or Luigi's Mansion, but also Epic Yarn, whatever they're calling it for 3DS as well. So lots of remasters in there, along with what I think is the more interesting story, gentlemen, is their online service. Is that the rumored online service, the fact that you've been able to play for free, and now starting tomorrow on September 18th, you no longer can. So you're going to have to purchase the online service. The online service, it can be purchased per month for $4 a month. It can be purchased for 3 months for $8, or a year for $20. Or if you do a family plan, which means you have multiple Nintendo IDs, that the family plan is $35 per month. One of the other news stories out there that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Swiss.
It's $35 per year.
Per year. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, that's a huge, very good clarification. I think one of the things I was already starting to think ahead of is one of the other things that has been tied in with this, and I've seen this on a couple sites as well, is that as of the 18th, you no longer, your Nintendo ID is going to be linked permanently to your Nintendo Switch. You're no longer able to unlink those as well. And so there's a number of kind of infrastructural changes that seem to be happening here. But one of them is that the voice communication is still going to be through their phone app. So there is, even as they're rolling this out, they're still using the Nintendo Voice channel app that launched last summer as their way for voice communication. At least for some games, right? And we also have the clarification that, again, Fortnite is still not going to use the Nintendo Voice app. You can just plug in your headphones. That games like Fortnite and Arena of Valor, a new MOBA that's coming out. It's a mobile game, MOBA. And then also Warframe, which is now has a release date in November. All three of those are not going to require the online service for online play. So these are three free-to-play games that are not going to require the service. But one of your big games, Prime, is Rocket League, and it is going to require the service.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems kind of a excuse me. It just seems kind of a mess to me, like how they're rolling this out. Like some games are. So I don't know if it's just free to play games maybe that are not going to need the service, or because it seems like that for now at least with those three games you had mentioned. I hadn't seen any other games besides those three that they had mentioned that weren't going to need the online service. So
Yeah, right. Otherwise, Paladin should be in there as well as another free-to-play game, but I
yeah,
haven't
so
seen that listed either.
no, so I don't know. It just seems kind of weird. It's fine to me, to be honest with you. I don't mind having to pay. I mean, I do it with Xbox Live, and the price isn't super high. I mean, I'll probably go with the family plan because I have, my son and my wife will probably want to be on there because some of the classic Nintendo stuff that you can do that's been mentioned obviously in the past. You got the NES games that'll be in there that will have online functionality.
Yeah, so talk about those. So what are the NES games? What's the online functionality that's going to be there?
Well, I don't have that pulled up right now, but
Oh, you
give
had
me
your
a give me a
you,
second, and
you gave
I'll.
yourself a segue,
I know.
and you
I'm sorry. I
can't even.
just messed it
I
all
got
up.
it up.
See,
I
Okay.
there you
got
go.
it up.
Switch it.
I got you.
That's why we
Yeah,
got more than
there are
one
20
host.
games. We got 20 games, so we got like Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers, Balloon Fight, Ice Climber, Dr. Mario, Zelda, Mario Brothers 3, Soccer, Tennis, Donkey Kong, Double Dragon, River City Ransom, Ghosts and Goblins, Tecmo Bowl, Gradius, Pro Wrestling, Excite Bike, Yoshi, Ice Hockey, and Baseball. And so those are the ones that launch, and following in the next couple of months, we'll get stuff like Solomon's Key, NES Open Tournament Golf, Super Dodgeball, Metroid. Those are October. November, Metroid, Mighty Bomb Jack, and Twinbee. And in December, Wario's Woods, Ninja Gaiden, and Adventures of Lolo. So pretty much the, like I say, the classic lineup. Most of those games are ones that I have in cartridge form. But the big thing is that they do they treat the NES games a little differently than they do the your core games, right? Because if you don't renew your subscription, they blast away your cloud saves. However, with these NES games, I think they let you download the saves onto the local console, so you don't actually lose them, but you just won't have access to the games because if you don't log in once a week or something, they won't let you play them. So it's kind of like you guys said, it's in a lot of ways like they do something and then they kind of contradict themselves or they do it a different way, and it's just feels very like there's a lot of different teams that are all competing to see who can have dominance in the Nintendo Online arena. But
yeah, that was the other thing I was
anyway,
going to mention. Actually, was the save stuff. How even in that regard, some of the games aren't going to have save data in the cloud. So it's so weird. I don't know what they're thinking, and it's even more weird since they delayed it a year, I believe, because it was supposed to come out last year in the fall. So I don't know what's going on, and it just seems kind of like a little bit of a mess. So we'll see though. We'll see how we got tomorrow. It's coming out, so I don't know. DB, you got any thoughts on all these features?
I'm not going to
that are coming
disagree
out?
that it's not a mess, right? I mean, I really think it is. It is a lot of inconsistencies. I do wonder, Swiss. I wonder how many teams are working on this and how much of it is they parsed this out and said, "Here's the deadline. Give me everything you got by this date so we can roll something out." For the price and the functionality, I almost would be, I almost would be willing to pay this just for the classic game subscription idea, right? The ability to have, if they could roll out and keep these games coming at a hard clip of 3 to 5 per month, and not kind of end up what happened with the Virtual Console on the Wii, where they started off really strong, and by the end of the first year, it was down to a trickle. But the fact that they're not only adding in the online functionality so that we could play River City Ransom together or Tecmo Bowl against each other, right? But also games where there's not two-player co-op or competitive, that there's past the controller aspects of something like Super Mario 3, so somebody can be Luigi and Mario and go back and forth. Or they've also talked about the ability of kind of the second player being the kind of coach or the equivalent of what your co-op couch friend would have been back in the day, of being able to point at something or put a hand or put a note or a tip on the screen, almost like what they were trying to do and what they did with Miiverse in some games, right? Like if you think about Mario Maker, right? Like you could do Miiverse posts throughout the game that would give people tips about where to jump or where to avoid. That this seems like this could be, one of the very classic Nintendo thing of the iteration of an idea that we've seen before in some capacity. So I think this is good. We do get save states. I think that the Virtual Console end of this deal is probably the most value added. I think the online play, as you said, Prime, is fine, right? We do this for every other system if you want to play online. The biggest piece still is the party chat, right? And if I want to play Tecmo Bowl together, or in October if we want to do a round of golf, and to be able to talk and chat while we do that, I don't know that the Nintendo app is going to be the best functionality for that. And then we're running 3 different clients on the side to be able to do one simple gaming experience, which Sony and Microsoft have been doing consistently, or Prime and my uncle did just fine on BattleNet over the weekend.
Swiss.
Yes, sorry, Prime. Yes.
That was not me, although I would have liked to. So I guess 2 things. So all those games that Swiss had mentioned, I'm assuming now they said everything is supposed to have online capability of some kind, right?
Some type of value added feature to it. Yeah.
How does Ninja Gaiden work like that? I don't understand that one. If it's like the original Ninja Gaiden, like that was pretty much a solo experience as far as I know. You might have been able to do like trade off, multiplayer or gaming, I guess. Like you pick 2 players, but you take turns. So
one of the things they did mention way back when they were pitching this was some type of like online leaderboard, right? Like they give you a certain set of screens or a dungeon in Zelda and the number of enemies or the time that you could beat it in. So I could see if that's what they're doing, if they did something like that with Ninja Gaiden,
okay. Yeah.
That could certainly be.
Pac-Man Deluxe, while they had the leaderboards and stuff like that.
Yeah, yep.
All right. And then the second thing was, where were these wireless NES controllers on the Mini Classic? That's all I want to ask. Where were these things? I know they're kind of like Switch things because you can actually plug them into your Switch to charge them. But, I mean, come on, guys. Really? But that's just me griping.
Well, but they're also the same price as the NES Classic, though. So
true.
They're $60 for 2 controllers, and you have to be a Nintendo Online subscriber in order to get them, which initially sounded kind of strange, but I think the more that I've heard people talk about it, I think it really is that idea of giving some value added, but also the idea of Nintendo getting burned by scalpers for things like the NES Classic 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So, any other thoughts on the online service here?
No, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see. I know I'm gonna do it this week, and we'll have more to talk about next week, I'm sure.
Any issues with the one-time login every week for the NES games? I mean, for me, I'm usually online anyway, so it doesn't bother me really.
Yeah, I can see the IP rights holder aspect of that, right? Like if I could just download them and cancel the subscription, or take my Nintendo Switch offline forever, that could be problematic down the road. But speaking of offline and online, we've got a couple other Nintendo stories as well, don't we?
Yes, we do. Actually, I had one more thought. Now I forgot what it was because you mixed me up there a little
I
bit.
rushed it. Oh no.
Yeah, you mixed
Well,
me up.
you think about it and
Yeah, I'll think about that. But for now, yeah. So the other big news, I guess, if you want to call it that, even though technically this is only for Japan right now, is that we're getting the Switch is getting over in Japan Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is going to be the newest Assassin's Creed. But much like I believe it was Resident Evil 7, it's going to be streaming only, so you'll have to stream it to your console to play it. Um, uh, do you think any of those those type of games are going to come here anytime soon?
I I don't know. All right. I mean, I think that is. I think it would be really beneficial if they did, but I don't know if it for at this stage in console life cycles that it's something, how many Switch owners that the Switch is the only console that they have, right? Is the streaming functionality of that worth it? I think in some ways the infrastructure aspect in Japan is much easier to roll that out for streaming and having access to good high speed Wi-Fi, where here, the functionality of that would be much more isolated or in metro urban pockets versus in Japan. I think the pricing model is also really interesting in terms of, and this is similar to what Resident Evil 7 did, is that you're buying access. You're not buying the game. And so what they're talking about here is you could get 2 years worth of access for 8,400 yen or around $75, or you could actually pay a daily rate, almost to kind of rent the game uh, for what is the equivalent of $6.50 per day. So I think in a lot of ways it's a really interesting model for Nintendo to kind of play around with, and I think in some ways, just like stories that we've had around Microsoft about their the subscription package or the buying in the all access bundle. These are things that probably are good kind of market tests for down the road, right? If the Nintendo Switch is only a year old, and in 2 years from now we're going to be talking about new consoles on Sony and Xbox, that this could be Nintendo's option to keep the Switch viable, is just to be able to be a streaming platform. And the fact that it's built on NVIDIA and what was a streaming tablet should make it possible.
I just hate the pricing model so much because you have you can get Premier Access EA Origin for $99 a year, right? But then you have an entire library of software. With this, it's
rather than just one game.
$75 for one game. I mean, yeah, okay, it's 2 years. So really, what do you have? Like $37.50 per year for one game, and there's just it doesn't compete with these other streaming platforms. If they did $30 or $25 for a couple of years for the streaming access, I think it would be establish much more of a beachfront, in the streaming space. But I think they just priced themselves out of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Although that's here in North America, right? I wonder if that price is a competitive in Japan.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. What did you say the daily rate was? $6.50 a day?
Yes, $6.50.
So I don't know. I don't get that at all. Because it's like a week is worth that's almost what $50 right there. So I mean, I don't understand the pricing at all. So it just seems kind of nuts to me. I don't know. Would So we have Resident Evil, we have Assassin's Creed. Do you think they already had Assassin's Creed ready to go, or were they do you think they were looking at Resident Evil and saying, okay, I guess this did fairly well? I mean, I don't, because obviously it's two different companies, Ubisoft and Capcom. So I don't know. You think they would need to have this kind of already worked out in the background. So is it just them I guess like you were saying they're just testing the waters, or what was their reasoning I guess behind all these streaming games.
So I'm going to float a theory, and it is only a theory because I haven't read it anyplace else. But so earlier in the year, when Ubisoft fought back Vivendi, Vivendi,
Yeah, Vivendi.
right?
Yep.
One of the big investors there at almost 30% was Tencent, and who's got a good stronghold in the Asian markets and has the network infrastructure to do streaming like this. And so I wonder if, I don't know if it's too soon for that connection to be made, but it certainly seems like the streaming model and built off the back of support with Tencent, that it could be a way that they're starting to kind of dip into this to see if not only can a game like Assassin's Creed Odyssey be streamed to the Switch, but could it be streamed to a mobile device as well? And then suddenly you're in a whole different market in mainland China and other places.
We've talked a lot though about how this affects the Switch from the perspective of, okay, is this going to become a viable streaming platform? Is this going to become a viable like a revenue stream? And then you throw in the Tencent connection, but like where does Ubisoft and Capcom land in all this? I mean, is it Nintendo setting this price of $75 for 2 years? Or is it Ubisoft? Like, how is this? I'm kind of curious, like how this is, where the partnership, like the boundaries of the partnership here. Because if it was all one company or it was all Nintendo first party, I could see maybe like some semblance of a strategy. But to me, it's just, I don't know if Nintendo approached Ubisoft and this is what's driving it. It's just, I don't know. It seems kind of like everything else with Nintendo Online.
Lots of
Ad hoc.
pulled in all kinds of different directions, right?
Well, do we know what the pricing was for Resident Evil 7?
Yeah, I just looked that up here. So that was 180 days for the equivalent of $18. So you can more or less do a year
the
worth
same.
for $36, right? So pretty
So
much kind of the same,
$72.
just
Yeah.
spliced out in a different way.
Yeah.
But again, yeah.
I think it depends on the type of player too, right? I mean, for some players, having access for half a year for $18 is actually probably a pretty good bargain, right? I mean, just before this podcast started, we talked about some games that we have digitally that we're going to get around to at some point in time, right? But we've paid full price for them, and are we really going to get around to them? So maybe paying a discounted price for something that you're only going to play for a little while, for certain gamers who aren't looking to build a collection, that this is not a bad thing. I think like a lot of other markets, we'll see them kind of play around with what the right price point is, though.
So let me ask you guys this then. So the two games that we have, Resident Evil 7 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, they're both, I mean, Resident Evil 7 is kind of like survival horror action type stuff, right? And then we got the new and improved RPG focused Assassin's Creed. Both of these are relatively they are single player experiences, right? So is that the type of game, the genres of games that you would want in a service like this? Or does it make more sense to have them be your more competitive type games?
Well, I guess for now, for the way these services are, you're probably better off doing single player, because obviously, maybe not so much Resident Evil, but I guess Assassin's Creed's a little bit faster paced, I suppose, at least in the fighting and stuff like that. And obviously, you're streaming this stuff, and it's gonna, there's a lot of data coming through the your line, so it's probably a little bit easier if you're doing single player, since you don't have to have all these connections coming through, and having to worry about all these other people trying to their data too coming through, into your machine, which I guess technically at that point your Switch is just like a dummy terminal, I suppose. You're just
Yeah.
receiving data, but
I'd
still.
imagine everything would be going to a central server, and all you would have is the video and input.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of curious, like if that's the. It's interesting that they're going after those types of gamers, like the single player experience gamers, rather than the people that are more compelled to want to remain part of a community and put their cash in that way. But
I wonder though if that's still a lag issue or the potential of that, right? Rather than a competitive multiplayer type of experience. But I think your rationale there is sound, Swiss. That it would be much easier for somebody getting into a competitive multiplayer type of community to continue to kind of pony up that amount of money on a regular basis versus that kind of solitary single player experience.
All right. So any other comments?
No, I think that my only final comment is I wonder what the next one will be in terms of, I would guess that the next Devil May Cry that was teased at E3 will probably be another potential one for this as well.
yeah, I wonder. I'm trying to think what games are more appealing to the Eastern audience rather than. So Assassin's Creed's a unique choice with that, but being an RPG, like you said, more Capcom titles probably would make sense.
Yeah, I could also see it being something where Square gets into this as well, right? If they're not doing the kind of pocket edition like they announced, this was the other Square game that we didn't talk about, the Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition. That if they don't do something like that for some of their titles, that they could come through and do streaming, right? Like, Dragon Quest 11 was supposed to come out on Switch. In theory, it's still coming, but there's no time frame to it. Suddenly, if Dragon Quest 11 on Switch becomes a streaming game, it certainly accelerates Square Enix's time frame of being able to put it out on that platform, especially in Japan.
That would make actually that's probably one of the top picks you can pull. I was trying to think Hideo Kojima games, but the new Kojima studio is now a Sony first party, right? Or what, second party, or however they affiliate. It's exclusive. Yeah. So
some exclusivity there. Yep.
Konami, what does Konami even have anymore as far as IPs?
Oh, just pachinko machines, right? That's and Castlevania. They'll farm that out to different places, but I think that'll be interesting. It's a good tie back into the NES Classic games, is right. Do we see some of those Konami classics that showed up on the NES Classic? Whether it's Castlevanias, whether it's Contras, right? Playing Contra in a online co-op could be a whole lot of fun. So we'll see. I think Konami is ending up, it's much more of a license based piece here rather than any type of active development other than PES, other than Pro Evo. Soccer is, I think, the only game that they've really put out in the last year.
All right, I'm back. I'm sorry, I had some technical issues there, of course.
No problem. We're always
E2KG.
We're good to fill. That's good. If you leave Swiss and I on the mics talking about Nintendo stuff, chances are we can fill time. So
yeah. So I don't know if you heard me before I dropped off there, but I was just gonna say, if you had any other comments? It looks like you're kind of filling that space there on the anything else that was announced on the direct. For me, obviously, Animal Crossing finally full game that's coming out next year. So that was a highlight of my time there with the direct. Any other quick hits here?
Luigi's Mansion 3.
Oh yeah,
they teased that, I think, in the all those Smash Brothers directs.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then they had a new game from Game Freak, which is the Pokemon.
Yes,
Developers.
working title of Town.
Yes.
Very engaging title. But the art style looks great, and we'll see what it actually is in terms of a game. But oftentimes, Game Freak stuff has been a little more experimental and smallish, right? We had the solitary horse racing game of Pocket Card Jockey, or the elephant platformer game. What was that? Tumbo or something?
Oh yeah, that was a mobile. That was just a mobile one, right? Mobile game.
No, I think it was out on Xbox and PlayStation.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yep.
Did we mention the board games that are coming to Nintendo Switch?
No,
I was
go
gonna
ahead and
mention
mention
that.
it
Go
up.
So we got stuff like Carcassonne, Lord of the Rings Living Card Game, which I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I never heard of that.
Pandemic, but then they have Catan and Munchkin. And I will say that Catan and the Switzer Sphere is actually a big deal. I literally I bought that game for my brother one year for Christmas, and I think at first he was like, "Why did you buy me this?" And he and his wife played it, and I'm going to literally once a week for the next 3 years. He had a gaming group where his buddies would come over and their wives, and they played Catan. And pretty much, he spent his entire time when he was stationed in Japan playing Catan. So, and he has a Switch, so I'm sure he'll pick it up. But this is kind of an interesting little direction that they're going to be using the platform for. So I'd be interested to see if digital versions of these board games kind of pick up. It'd be nice if the online play had some, ability to communicate with your friends while you're playing across the interwebs, but that's, I guess, a bridge too far for Nintendo.
Well, you can. You just got to, do it a roundabout way. That's all. We had the Capcom beat 'em up bundle, which has a bunch of beat 'em ups like Final Fight, King of Dragons, which I never heard of, Captain Commando, Knights of the Round, Warriors of Fate, Armored Warriors. Some of these I've never heard of, other than Final Fight and Captain Commando. But yeah, the old in the vein of, obviously, like I said, Final Fight, Streets of Rage, just those kind of games, Simpsons arcade, stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff that came out. So so we're talking about Assassin's Creed, Mr. Swiss, and we have some news stories that came out recently. And give me a second because I lost my browser here. I think I had too many tabs open. That's why my browser crashed before. First
Don't
up
you
here,
still use IE Prime?
yeah, I was still using IE. I'm sorry.
I gotta find the tab though, because I have a lot of tabs open.
Microsoft. See,
Here we are.
It's gonna crash.
Assassin's Creed Odyssey has a new exploration mode that encourages investigation. So we're about to change gears on everybody. So I got this from US Gamer, and basically they said, thanks to IGN preview of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, we know players will have two gameplay options, exploration mode and guided mode. The former system replaces traditional map markers with mere hints scattered around ancient Greece for you to uncover, while quest characters won't always point you in the exact direction you're meant to go in order to complete their quest. The guided mode for Assassin's Creed Odyssey is more traditional. This mode sticks to the basics. Quest objectives and map markers will automatically appear on your map, and it basically plays out exactly like exploration did in Assassin's Creed Origins. And I was the one that threw this story in here just because it made the game more interesting for me again. I'd kind of lost some hype since the initial announcement at a week before it leaked at E3, and this makes it feel like more of an RPG, like the classic role-playing game, if it's implemented the way my imagination says it is, because I got to watch the video. But I felt myself like even now in Near Automata that I've been playing, and a lot in Horizon Zero Dawn, jumping to the map, seeing where my next objective is, okay, it's over there, and just getting from point A to point B, and not really visiting the world, like using the world, being in the world. It's kind of like a checkpoint system. And I thought removing that could add some immersion into the game, and I think that's a good direction. And I'm kind of eager to see how it ends up playing out. Like, it kind of put the game back on my radar as a potential purchase this fall.
Yeah, I was listening once again. I was listening to a podcast today, actually, and a little bit yesterday, where they had mentioned how this Assassin's Creed seems to be relying more heavily on kind of RPG elements, more so than I guess Origins did. I didn't play Origins, but DB, you played Origins, correct? Or at least
Yeah, I loved it actually. Great, real solid game. I could see where this, a lot of Origins ended up. There were some things where they did kind of do the Ubisoft open world, mark your map type of thing, but there were other times where you could explore and kind of stumble in and discover things. So if they lean further in that direction, where you could turn it on where you don't have any map icons until you actually discover it, yeah, I think it creates a whole different potential for a level of immersion with that world, and that's the one thing that Origins did really well, is it sucked me into the world of ancient Egypt. And if this can do the same thing with ancient Greece, it could be really engaging for players.
did they do a lot of stuff with the character as far as like, did you need to like upgrade? Did it get really specific where you had like upgrade their powers, upgrade their like their stamina and stuff like that, or was it a little bit more low key?
It was pretty much a skill tree. It wasn't like you were upgrading stats, right? You didn't have a stamina or strength, but it was much more of a skill tree, that you were upgrading combos or unlocking, you know, crazy things like the ability to move an arrow as you shoot it through the air, or different things like that.
Okay. Swiss, does that intrigue you even more?
I mean, I enjoyed Origins. I rented the game, and I enjoyed when I played it. It's just hard to crack my time at this point. So, this one, like, just the setting is more in my wheelhouse. And now that the problem I had with Origins was the mental block that I was expecting to play like a classic Assassin's Creed game, and that's not what it was. And with Odyssey, it just feels like they're like, they've been so much more upfront about it being a different experience, and maybe I just didn't pay enough attention to Origins, but I didn't get that marketing thrust so much then. With this one, it's being pitched to me in a way that appeals to my sensibilities as a gamer. So,
Yeah, this one, I was usually more interested in kind of the Egyptian culture, and like I said, I didn't play it unfortunately. I just watched a lot of videos and stuff on it, and it seemed cool. But for some reason, this one seems to be a little bit more intriguing to me, and it might be kind of maybe the more mythological aspects of it, because like there's one mission or something. It might be even the side quest. I think that they were calling it, where you actually fight Medusa. So I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. That's something totally different too from other Assassin's Creeds where you're just fighting normal people the whole time for the most part, as far as the ones I've played. So I think I've always been big on mythology, and even though I like the Egyptian culture a little bit better, as far as the mythology part of it, I've kind of know that mythology a little bit more, Medusa and minotaurs and stuff like that. So it's kind of,
I definitely think that the Greek mythology is more well known to at least American school children and American citizens than Egyptian mythology. We get more in school. We get like the pharaohs a little bit and stuff, but like I don't know the difference between like Sekhmet and I think Ra is the sun god. It's about
Yeah, right. I think you're absolutely right. You get a lot more, at least when Western culture. I think there's more of a knowledge of Greek and Roman mythology, in part because of naming and nomenclature and the things that we have named after those gods and goddesses,
Yeah.
versus the different gods of fertility and other things within Egyptian culture. Which
Yeah.
for me, it made Origins really interesting because it was stuff I kind of only knew cursory, and so it was very engaging that way. And I think that it could be the same here for people who are interested in Greek mythology, or at least have kind of that cursory knowledge of it. That the name dropping ability of it could be beneficial to hook somebody in. And whether it's this exploration mode, whether it's the action combat, or the fact that it's also going to have that same type of educational mode where you can move and navigate through the world and just kind of learn about the environment and the world in kind of a history class perspective. I think, again, adds a lot of depth to this giant game that Ubi is putting out.
Did you jump into that section a lot? The more educational stuff, DB?
No, I played around with it just a little bit.
Okay.
It was really kind of interesting, but I truthfully, by the time it came out in like February, and I was kind of already moving on to other things at that stage. So
Yeah.
I think if it launches at if they can roll that out at the same time of launch, it has the potential to be a little bit more interesting. I think the one benefit that it did do with Origin is that you could buy it as a separate, at least on Steam, you could buy it as a separate game, right? So schools or other things could purchase that as its own little standalone thing without having to purchase the entire game.
Yeah, that was one kind of thing that I thought was kind of cool, that I might kind of actually go back and just maybe when Assassin's Creed's on sale, or even if you can just buy it standalone on Xbox, I jump on that just to kind of explore everything. I think that'd be kind of cool.
I don't know if we covered it. And I agree with both of you guys. Like, as far as the settings, it's becoming much more intriguing, I think, and the settings driving it, I think, a little bit more than say that the past is. I mean, it's always been historical in a way, but this is kind of taking it to another level. What the next kind of game might be, but did I don't know if we covered it or it got filtered out when we voted on the topics, but this will be the last Assassin's Creed game for a while. I think they've already come out and said no Assassin's Creed in 2019. So
Yeah.
Yes, that was a news story from a couple weeks ago where they had said there's not going to be a 2019, and the reason that there's back-to-back ones is that these two games were in development simultaneously.
All right. All right. So then up next here we got well, a little bit more than just Assassin's Creed. We got Ubisoft talking about their kind of the gaming culture. Swiss, I don't know if you want to talk on that.
yeah, basically it's kind of a long article, but the thrust of it is that they interviewed Alain Corey. I'm probably butchering his name. Ubisoft, an executive director at Ubisoft, and he was talking about the community aspects with like the Space Monkey program and everything, and how much Ubisoft wants to get feedback from fans, and in turn, kind of help guide the development, drive the development, and the quote that really stuck out to me said, "We exchange ideas with the communities on all of our games. Basically, what we want is to adapt our games more to their taste or to what they wish." So I kind of thought, my first thought, again, looking glass half empty, is that sometimes gamers are a fickle and not and perhaps not the most intelligent bunch, and that the guys that the greats like Hideo Kojima and Miyamoto, and they might know a little bit better about how a game should be structured and designed, and I was a little sad to see that, to be honest with you, because it's like I want the creative folks to be doing the pushing and not just, yeah, well, we want to get them what they want, so we make money. Give them what they want until they get sick of it, and then move on to the next thing. And if I was really being negative, which I'm trying not to be, but if I was really being negative, I'd say that it was almost like a locust mentality where you just like assault, and take every last scrap of revenue that you can from a theme and whatnot, and then move on. So that's why we're getting the glut of superhero movies that we're getting in the entertainment sphere, and we just got 50 bajillion battle royale new games announced, and maybe just maybe you can let your creative folks experiment and take a little risk, and maybe they'll do something awesome, and hey, you'll make money that way. But I don't know. I'm looking at it very cynically.
I think there's a lot of different ways that we can go this way. This topic that you do have a point, Swiss, right? Like there is the ability of saying, what is the artistic vision of this? What is, gaming as an expression of art, gaming as an art form? Is it trying to communicate something through this interactive medium versus the idea of gaming as sport, gaming as entertainment, right? That this is a platform where people are going to engage with each other and play for enjoyment and entertainment versus play to walk away with a emotional narrative experience. And so I do wonder how this approach for Ubi manifests itself through all their games, right? In some places like Skull and Bones or For Honor or Rainbow Six, those are games where in Rainbow Six and Skull and For Honor, right? They've developed a big community around those by listening to those players. But for something that could be artistically driven or potentially narratively driven, like whatever Beyond Good and Evil is going to end up being, that becomes. Do you end up with so many voices and influences there that there's no clear direction, and so it becomes a jack of all trades and meaningful to most, meaningless ultimately to most people.
Yeah, the For Honor examples are a good one, because like I feel like if a game's broken, like if a mechanic is broken, that feedback from the community can be valuable, like a valuable weather vane to kind of get you back on the right path. But I just look at it because it's like I said, my first thought on this was it jumped to Battle Royale in my head, and just the way that everybody seems to be doing kind of the same structure game, and there's a virtue to listening to them, but I like my creative directors to have creative freedom. I don't want them to be like, look, this is what the market dictates is a good game. You need to work within this box, and I took a limiting focus on it, but there are positive aspects to it. Just a little story that caught my eye.
Yeah, I mean, and this can be said for like obviously all companies, game developers out there. I mean, obviously, we look back on EA, or more so for I guess Bioware with Mass Effect 3, where they had that big hubbub about the ending of the game, and they actually went back and released some DLC, to actually kind of changed it or expanded on it. I guess I don't know if they actually changed the whole thing. You saw Bethesda do it with Fallout 3, where actually the game stopped at when you finish the game, and people are like, hey, there's so much more we can do. So they rewrote it a little bit, and DLC again, once again, and open up the game after after you beat after you beat it, instead of just stopping cold turkey. Which I'm kind of surprised they did that, because I mean, coming from like Skyrim, and or actually, yeah, Skyrim was before Fallout 3, I believe, right? and Oblivion, where it was kind of just you kept going after you beat the game. We've seen this obviously with a lot of stuff, and DB made some good points with um, basically saying it might be kind of good for some games, obviously with like multiplayer games, which obviously there's a lot of moving parts. This is more PvP stuff, and makes more sense for that instead of maybe like a single player game where it should be kind of the vision of the of the company and of those developers and designers and all that. Um, in the article they kind of say it kind of goes beyond early access. It's like you're basically there from the very beginning with you know with the art, and I don't know how much how granular they get in this, if they show like from the very beginning of like the process, or if it's more of like, hey, we got an alpha of the game, so now we're gonna let the players give us all this feedback and stuff like that. So I don't know, I guess it kind of depends on the game and the game type of how much feedback they want to actually take seriously and say, hey, we're going to change this whole thing around. So I don't know, I guess we'll kind of find out in the future if one day they say, hey, Skull and Bones, we're going to delay it another year because we got all this feedback from the gamers. And I guess Cleese is going to have a fit, have a tantrum because he can't play Skull and Bones. But we'll see how it plays out. So any other last words on this? I mean, it was probably a lot we could say, but I think we're starting to hit the time limit here. Swiss.
I think like many of our topics, this could very well be something we come back to, right? If Ubi really does lead into this and start soliciting or announcing how they're changing direction based on Twitch streams, right? Like this could definitely be a topic, and for not only us to come back to, but for the industry to take up, because it could be problematic to Swiss's points, right? It could be, you could lose that artistic vision, and things could get kind of stuck in development purgatory as they're trying to please every audience that they can think of.
It'd be fun to see some post-mortems on this subject. So it's kind of, I'd like to see how, like you said, how things go and what kind of information will they either share or will get leaked out. I assume if it gets leaked out, it won't be a happy tale, however, but time will tell.
Yes, definitely. All right. So I believe that is the end of our show for today. Any last words for anything that was talked about tonight? Nintendo, Assassin's Creed? Anybody have anything else on the direct that they want to mention real quick?
No, who's reporting out tomorrow night? We got another show tomorrow, correct?
Yes, we have our Enough to Keep Going, our gamer experience show. It's actually going to be myself and Agascles is the only people scheduled. So I think you two have the night off. You deserve it.
Well, enjoy your playlist show, and you're reporting out, aren't you?
I believe Agascles is.
Aha, that's right, because he has
Been-
he has
He's
begged
manipulated
for
the system.
delays. Yes,
That's
right?
right.
I think somehow I feel like all of us have reported out more than he has. But so he's got what, Call of Duty Ghosts, or he's got Battlefield 1. He's got some type of single player
he had Ghosts
shooter
yeah.
here. Yep.
He was supposed to report on, yeah.
So stick around and come back tomorrow night and see what that sounds like after his experience.
The thing about Agascles, he's always going to have something new that he's played. So whether it's part of the pick segment or not, there's going to be some fresh commentary. So
yes, yeah, it is. It's Ghosts single player. So that's what I think that was his last one, his last report out. I think so. He should have a fresh game for the next time. So
yes, he did kind of end up getting to talk about all three of his choices that he he
right.
forced us to choose, but not choose.
Yeah, that's all right. It's fun. We hear his other. He's got like Swiss said, he's got tons of other games that he's always playing. So we always hear at least a variety from him. Unlike me, which I'm pretty much same old every week almost. So that's all right. We still get a variety of games that we talk about. So yes, come back 8:15 Central Time, 9:15 Eastern tomorrow, and then be back next week for another deep dive. And we may have some changes coming up soon. We'll probably talk about that next week, most likely, to our show. So, on behalf of Mr. Swissguard And DBQ Hams, I am Osiris Prime. Thanks for watching and keep on gaming.